a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
A man with a dream. Who is this American whose dream has touched the heart of his nation and stirred the compassion of nations far from his own? What is the dream which has reminded a great people of the roots of their strength and the strength of their destiny? What is the secret of the dream? That it has shaped a message of hope with meaning for a world threatened by violence but yearning for peace.
I have a dream.
Who is this dreamer, Martin Luther King, whose message of love and nonviolence has earned him the world's foremost prize for peace? He is a minister and the son of a minister, a man of God, who grew to his maturity solidly moored in the ethics and the beliefs of the Christian faith. But he spent his youth in the environment of the American South, whose history and tradition of racial segregation denied the Negro many of his constitutional rights. Both of these conditions of his life, his Christian ideals and his Southern Negro boyhood, fashioned his lustrous and shimmering dream. And what is his dream? It is the dream of brotherhood, of men of both races, men of all races, working and building together, sharing the substance of their lives, and together molding their common destiny. But this is a dream which animates many men, and which many have labored to achieve. What gives King's dream its special distinction is his commitment to the belief that the dream can be made real through peaceful means. Violence too often has been the brutal handmaiden of social protest. Around the world, the frozen patterns of centuries have cracked and crumbled as men have reached for freedoms long denied them. They have reached with flame and the sword, and a bleeding world has wept and bled anew as they sought to escape old injustices. It was America's special good fortune that a young leader emerged whose passion to see justice for all his people was coupled with a passionate faith in nonviolence as a weapon fit for the victory. He spoke of it this way.
Nonviolence is a powerful and just weapon. It is a weapon unique in history, which cuts without wounding and ennobles the man who wields it. It is a sword that heals.
He carried his conviction throughout the South, preaching it in churches and meeting halls, in villages and cities. Men who stood poised to reach for change that had been long in coming heard his words.
To our most bitter opponents we say, do to us what you will, and we shall continue to love you. Violence brings only temporary victories. Violence, by creating many more social problems than it solves, never brings permanent peace. If we succumb to the temptation to use violence in our struggle for freedom, unborn generations will be the recipients of a long and desolate night of bitterness, and our chief legacy to them will be a never-ending reign of chaos.
Through the land of his vicarage, the words took hold and rooted in the hearts of people who had waited through the lifetime of generations for the full promise of their birthright, and now would wait no longer. The message of love and nonviolence grew, and the massive flowering of a noble conviction impressed the world. Montgomery, Alabama, in 1955 was the beginning. In the heart of the Deep South, Montgomery's traditional pattern of segregation touched all forms of the city's life. The long frustration which this produced in its Negro citizens erupted when a colored seamstress riding in a bus refused to honor the traditions of segregated seating. From this incident grew a protest movement headed by Dr. King, then an obscure pastor of a Baptist church in Montgomery. The protest took the form of a boycott of the city's buses. For 381 days, the Negroes of Montgomery walked or rode in special carpools. The half-filled and sometimes empty buses made the effect of the boycott felt. Animosities buried beneath years of social custom struck dangerous sparks in the tense atmosphere of Montgomery. But Dr. King, himself a victim of these same animosities, continued to inspire his people with his own philosophy of nonviolence. Using peaceful methods, the Negroes of Montgomery won their battle. And with it, they won the admiration and support of millions of their countrymen, black and white alike. After that, in city after city through the South, Negro Americans began pressing for an end to segregation under the nonviolent banner raised by Martin Luther King. This great involvement had a momentous effect on the demonstrators themselves. Said Dr. King,
"From the depths in which the spirit of freedom was imprisoned, an impulse for liberty burst through."
But of even greater meaning was the essential significance of the demonstrations, as King saw it, and as he communicated it to his countrymen.
These men and women are in reality standing up for what is best in the American dream and for the most sacred values in our heritage, thereby bringing our nation back to those great wells of democracy which were dug deep by the founding fathers in their formulation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence.
The greatest demonstration of all came in the summer of 1963, when more than 200,000 Americans of both races massed for the Great March on Washington to manifest their conviction that full citizenship rights for the Negro could be delayed no longer. Dr. King described it.
They came from almost every state in the Union. They came in every form of transportation. They were good-humored and relaxed, yet disciplined and thoughtful. The enormous multitude was the living, beating heart of an infinitely noble movement. It was an army into which no one had to be drafted. It was white and Negro and of all ages. It had adherents of every faith, members of every class, every profession, every political party, united by a single ideal. It was a fighting army, but no one could mistake that its most powerful weapon was love. Everyone who believed in man's capacity to better himself had a moment of inspiration and confidence in the future of the human race. And every dedicated American could be proud that a dynamic experience of democracy in his nation's capital had been made visible to the world.
This momentous American experience in the summer of 1963 climaxed a decade of social change in the United States of America. A peaceful revolution, which began with the Supreme Court decision declaring segregation in the nation's public schools to be in violation of the nation's Constitution, through the Montgomery boycott and the demonstrations which followed it, to this deeply moving occasion. There could be no doubt of the revolution's effects thus far, but now is the time for the real results to show. Only a few months before his tragic death, President Kennedy called upon the American Congress to pass the most far-reaching civil rights bill in the nation's history.
To protect the constitutional rights of all citizens.
President Johnson picked up the plea and voiced it with a fervor felt by most Americans.
First, no memorial oration or eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill for which he fought so long.
The day the President was able to sign that bill into law was a triumphant day in America's national life. Accepting the pen with which the President signed, Dr. King said he would prize it as his most treasured possession. Later, he declared his convictions that that bill, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which he and other leaders had worked so hard to bring about, would go far toward making the American dream a reality for all Americans. In less than a decade's time, the span of the quiet revolution which he helped to form, reminding his nation as he did so of its promise of greatness, Martin Luther King's moral leadership has been recognized by plain citizens and presidents alike, in his own country and around the world. Now, as he moves to accept the Nobel Prize for Peace, Americans of all races and all beliefs share a penetrating pride in his achievements and in the recognition given to him. Men of goodwill everywhere can applaud the philosophy which has earned for Martin Luther King the coveted award. Beyond that, distinguishes the nation which bred him.
Humiliate the white man, but to win his friendship and understanding. And the end is reconciliation and the creation of the beloved community. We are not seeking to annihilate the opponent, but to convert him. And this is why we follow nonviolence. I think the end of violence is to get rid of, to annihilate the opponent. But in the nonviolent movement, the end is to convert the opponent and to bring about a society where all men will live together as brothers and every man will respect the dignity and worth of human personality.